Good evening and nice to see you again. And a big welcome also to those of you who just joined us today, the first time. And today's webinar is on Buy Now, Pay Later, a fast evolving market in Asia. But before I introduce the two speakers, let me share a little bit about us. That's me. So my name is Sophia. I curate learning programs at Spectrum. And aside from, curating learning programs for you at Spectrum, this is what we do. We are centrally located at Duo Tower, Bugis, Singapore. So aside from promoting this learning-focused culture for the business community, we have curated premium workspaces for you to work from, meetings and events solution as a one-stop solution, and also connections and resources to expand your business. So we are part of a Golden Equator group. So we are a holding group of businesses committed to creating value beyond the financials. So what's next? Coming soon for learning is the birth of Pinnacle. So it's in the works with 3 verticals. So we've got executive learning for corporates, business leaders, and managers, Pinnacle Next Generation or Next Gen for ultra high net worth families, and also Pinnacle Entrepreneurship for entrepreneurs with the skill sets to provide to entrepreneurs with skill sets and knowledge essential to bring their big ideas to a valid business. So this is a training and mentoring session from our community of business leaders in our exclusive network. So now back to the webinar. Buy Now, Pay Later, fast evolving market in Asia. Let me introduce you to the esteemed speakers for today. Kelvin Choo, Regional Vice President of Partnerships, Atome. His work experience spans across financial payments, utilities, and telecommunications industries. He acquires partnerships with merchants in both B2C and B2B across industries to drive business development opportunities and revenue streams. He drives partnerships with financial institutions and banks and merchants on engagements on usage and tactical campaigns. Atome is a leading Buy Now, Pay Later brand in Asia, launched in December 2019, part of Advanced Intelligence Group and headquartered in Singapore. So for those of you who doesn't know this, Atome stands for Available to Me. So who best to moderate today's session is Bernard Soo, Chief Executive of FinTech Academy. He has more than 17 years experience in the wealth management industry. He helms FinTech Academy to champion and advocate FinTech literacy, digital mindset, and financial literacy in Asia. So he also serves as an executive community member on Singapore FinTech Association to continue growing SFA's role as a center of Singapore's FinTech ecosystem and further foster business growth with simplified access to capital and to drive talent development initiatives in the FinTech space. So questions, audience, if you have any of them, please post them, take this opportunity and post them onto the platform. So they'll be addressed after the dialogue. So without further ado, Bernard, over to you, please.
All right. Thank you, Sophia, for your kind introduction. Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm Bernard. So I'm very honored to be here today to be the moderator for this webinar and to be able to interview Mr. Kelvin Choo, Regional VP of Partnerships at Atome. Hi, Kelvin. Thanks for joining me today to share your insights on the Buy Now, Pay Later landscape.
Hi, good evening, Bernard. Thanks for having me. Definitely it's an honor for us to speak on this forum with FTA itself. And I'll definitely look forward in having an engaging conversation with everyone on the call.
Right. Thanks so much, Kevin. Well, in the recent years, the growth of Buy Now, Pay Later has been phenomenal across the globe. And according to this year's WorldPay Global Payments Report, the market of Buy Now, Pay Later as a payment is expected to double by 2024 in Asia. So looks like there's a lot of buzz in your market, Kelvin, and I'm sure you get a lot of questions pertaining to the rise of Buy Now, Pay Later and the challenges. But first thing first, can you please share a bit more about Atome's story and the mission Atome is driving for the Buy Now, Pay Later?
Yeah, certainly, Bernard. I mean, as what Sophia mentioned earlier, right? Atome actually means available to me. And even in our mission statement itself, with the group CEO itself has made it very clear to us and to work towards our vision in terms of providing products and services, more importantly, making them available to business owners and as well as consumers at the end of the day. And looking at the very humble beginning of us starting as early back in 2016 itself, with only 20 staff. And in the last 5 years itself, we just celebrated our 5th year anniversary. And in the last 5 years itself, we are able to grow across 12 markets today with a total staff strength of about 1,005. Wow. And also, just to share with everyone on the call itself, we have just announced our Series D funding completion with a value of $400 million. And that brings up the overall valuation of the company to over $2 billion itself. So definitely exciting times. And I think nice to also bring the conversation and the questions into perspective itself, we have also prepared a presentation deck itself. So if I may, let me just share the presentation deck.
Sure. Hey, thanks so much, Kelvin. Congratulations to Atome's success. I think you will be reaching greater heights in the very near future. Very excited to hear from your sharing today.
Thank you. Great. Okay, let me just quickly take you guys through the presentation itself. So in terms of the agenda of the presentation itself, we will be looking at a couple of areas, mainly towards the rise of BNPL across the region itself. And then thereafter, I will just do a very quick introduction more into Atome, as well as our parent company itself. And thereafter, I think the more important burning question would be looking at the emergence of BNPL version 2.0, what is to expect in the near future itself. And then thereafter, we will open up for Q&A session itself. So if today itself, if we look at the rise of the BNPL business itself, definitely is one of the fastest growing segment in the payment industry itself. And this is coming from a backbone of what is actually happening in the industry, right? We are all in a COVID situation. Footfall into shopping malls itself have dropped considerably. And hence more and more people are shopping online itself. Through our database itself, we are able to also ascertain the market growth itself in the BNPL space to easily reach 43% in the next 3 years itself. And even as cash in store payments drop worldwide 10% itself, a lot of these transactions are now being redirected on the e-commerce space itself. And especially in Atome's case itself, where we do provide that flexibility in terms of installment payment itself, as well as the ease and flexibility and smooth payment flow itself, that itself would also help to contribute to the customers itself. And if I were to look at Buy Now, Pay Later itself, definitely in Singapore's perspective, we are on track in terms of a 13% growth. And it's no surprise to us because a lot of users, as what I mentioned earlier, they are doing their shopping online because of the fact that they can't go, or it is better for them to shop online in this case. And as we move towards the Buy Now, Pay Later space, I think the question here is, how do we then make it more user-friendly to attract more users, at the same time also provide better services to our retailers as well as merchants. So a quick introduction of Atome itself and the entities. Atome we belong as part of the Advanced AI group within Singapore itself and across the region. Advanced AI is our parent company. As you can see from the chart here, we are split across a B2B, which is an enterprise solution, as well as the B2C consumer segment itself. Under the enterprise solution itself, we do have Advanced AI, which drives the AI as well as big data platform itself, providing the backbone to our engine. And thereafter, we also have Genie, which is ERP software as a solution service provider. We will help merchants also in the brick and mortar space to come on board into the e-commerce space and facilitate the kind of transaction for them to sell online. And of course, in the in more towards in our other company entities itself under Krita Pintar itself, which is we are one of the largest P2P micro lenders in Indonesia itself. And last but not least, Atome, or where we are all very familiar in Singapore itself. It is the largest, or in fact the leading buy now pay later player in Asia. So if we look at the structure itself, definitely a lot of back-end data services, big data, these are all being incorporated into the overall business model. So just to take everyone through, to share a little bit in terms of our market presence across the region itself. Today, Singapore itself is where we are headquartered in. And of course, over the span of the last 3 years itself, we were able to quickly expand across 9 markets, across Indonesia, Philippines, and I think most recently, the likes of Thailand, as well as Philippines itself, which are the new markets. We are looking to further expand across Asia by Q4 this year, and definitely that is part of our growth strategy. And coming back to, I think what we mentioned earlier, right? Buy now, pay later business itself attracts the millennials and the Gen Z. And if we look at these generations of consumers, right? What really attract them are, the ease of payment, at the same time, the value in terms of discounts. And I think more importantly, how do we engage them? And often enough, a lot of these digital media channels that we use are through the likes of influencers, as well as you can see some of the examples here. We do go ahead in terms of BTL. Not sure you have noticed, we do have buses that are plastered with our Atome logos that are running around Singapore itself. And likewise also within the malls itself, we do have ATLs. For example, in Bugis Junction itself, that's one of the mall, as you can see in the screen itself, where we do have our branding spread across the mall itself. So I guess these are just a couple of examples today that we use to attract the end consumers. At the same time, also to remind them that there is a flexible mode of payment available to them. And I think one very important area to share with everyone on the call itself, how do we, in a very short span of time over the last 2 or 3 years, to grow that quickly? And a lot of this is down to the fact of a very good partnership with our regional brands and partners and merchants. And a lot of these brands mentioned here, predominantly in the fashions and retail space itself, we do sign a regional contract with these partners for the likes of the Inditex brands. And what it means is that helps us to scale up very quickly across the region itself. So wherever Atome have our line of businesses in the 9 different markets itself, as long as these brands also operate and sell in this region, we will definitely be able to offer our buy now, pay later services to these merchants, as well as the end consumer within the country itself. And I think more importantly also, just to share, other than just looking at regional partnership itself, we do strategic tie-ups with mall partners, where in this case, the mall partners would also refer merchants to us. And as part of the earlier showcase of mall branding itself, that itself would also help to drive footfall into the mall. And also we do work closely with other marketplace player, the likes of Agoda, and what those Lazada, as what I mentioned here. And from there, we do provide the alternate mode of payment within this ecosystem itself. So moving on, if you look at what are the value that we bring to the merchants as well as end consumers itself, from our database itself, we are able to see bringing incremental sales to retailers and merchants as high as 23%. And across consumer itself, 76% likelihood for them to make bigger purchases on the buy now, pay later, because we give them that flexibility in terms of aggregating their purchases rather than having to put off on a later stage itself. And I think more importantly, driving a new segment or user segment itself, in this case itself, And today itself, just to share with the audience itself, 70% of our customer base within Atome itself are debit card users itself. And definitely this is a strong awareness and appeal to, like what I mentioned earlier, the Gen Z and as well as the millennials. And for us, I think that will be the continuous engagement and pull, working with strategic partners as we grow and drive scalability. So if I may move on to this slide itself, how do we then appeal to a lot of the end consumers, right? At the end of the day, and to them, what they are looking for is fast as well as ease, without being tied up to long, lengthy contracts, as well as the ability for them to make aggregate purchases, as what I mentioned earlier. So if you look at if you were to register within Atome as a customer itself, the full end-to-end process itself only takes you 72 seconds from the point of registration, and then you put your card on file, and then thereafter, using our app, going into a merchant's website, which today is being integrated with our payment method. And from there itself, giving the customer the option, as what you can see there, to split their payment into 3 installments itself. And from there itself, giving that very clear visibility, as well as, informing them, how the payments are going to be made, and giving them the option at the end of the day to choose buy now, pay later as an alternate mode of payment itself, which in this case is a secure and zero interest payment method across the board. And moving on to what we are looking at with the near future, or what's happening in across the region, and to share with the team on the call itself, we do understand and we are keeping a close look at what are the other buy now, pay later players across the region are doing. And what we have also seen in this case are financial institutions as well as banks partners coming into this space, acquiring buy now, pay later businesses. For example, for the likes of Square acquiring Afterpay, the likes of PayPal acquiring Paydi itself, and even Goldman Sachs itself acquiring Green Sky itself. So all in all, you can see it's fast becoming a very competitive space. Everyone is eating into the buy now, pay later space, and definitely buy now, pay later is here to stay itself. So the question here is, how do we then keep ourselves competitive as well as to be a market leader in this space itself? So I think more importantly, if I were to take back, the direction of my CEO, David itself, to him, he always drums it down to us. It is very important at the end of the day to make the user experience, the UI UX experience, seamless to the end consumers. That itself is one of the key areas that today at Atome we pride ourselves against, to make it very convenient as well as make it user friendly for end consumers to use our buy now, pay later payment method itself. So at the same time, what's next, right? I think more importantly, today, the buy now, pay later itself, we are also seeing a lot of buy now, pay later players going into the card issuance space. What do we mean by that? The likes of they issuing their own cards, buy now, pay later cards, which in this case, it could be in the form of a closed loop network or in the form of an open loop network itself. In a closed loop network itself, which means that buy now, pay later card itself could be used across all buy now, pay later merchants that are acquired by that player itself, or in an open loop scenario, which means that the card itself being issued by the buy now, pay later player could be used across the board, be it whether they are buy now, pay later merchants or they are not buy now, pay later merchants. And back end itself, they will then split the transactions into 3 equal installment or 4 equal installment, depending on the service provider itself. So definitely, if you ask me, these are something that are already happening in the likes of countries like US as well as in Australia. We are keeping a close watch on the developments of what is happening in these countries. And of course, we are also learning and taking the best practice, and hopefully and ideally in the near future, we will of course be implementing some of these strategies across Asia itself. So definitely, if you ask me, besides engaging or having a strategic partnership with the likes of merchants as well as end consumers, to us also what is very important is also having that very close partnership with the likes of the schemes as well as banks, because to us, we are not competing against the banks. We are in a way complementing the banks. What do I mean by that? Often enough, when we engage the banks, we would also want to see how we could also bring value back to the banking partnership itself. For example, running usage programs as well as marketing programs, where we also drive incremental sales to their card member base, as well as also giving them offers and marketing exposure in return. So all in all, in this close-knit partnership itself, that's where we hope to grow and more importantly, drive value to both parties itself. So here are some of the examples, as you can see, what we have done with the likes of UnionPay as well as Citibank as an example. But definitely we have more such strategic partnership in the pipeline coming up in the near future. I think that kind of sums up the end of my presentation.
Right. Thank you so much, Kelvin, for sharing all the insights on the rise of BNPL and then the philosophy of Atome, the UI UX. I think it's very interesting insights that you guys, and very good job that you guys are doing. You have shared briefly about the partnerships, with the merchants and the referral programs for merchants. But here in Asia, we are seeing the trend picking up so quickly amongst the consumer. And what do you think are some of the factors creating this rapid evolution of BNPL in Singapore and parts of Asia? Do you have any insights to share with us today?
Yeah, so definitely, like what I mentioned earlier, right? The current situation that we are in is definitely driving or forcing more people to shop online. I think that's definitely one of the major consideration or factors today that's helping the growth of buy now, pay later. But also similarly, if we look across the consumer landscape itself, as well as what's happening around the region itself. For example, on the merchant front itself, what we are able to work with partners or more partners or merchants is the ability to help to drive traffic and sales to them through our platform itself. And today itself, if you look at them, some of them in the brick and mortar space, they may not have presence on the e-commerce space. So through the likes of one of our sister company, Genie itself, that's how we also help these merchants to be digitalized as well as to go into the online space. At the same time, incorporating our buy now, pay later services to these merchants as an alternate mode of payment itself. And across the Southeast Asia market itself, where we see that it's a very fragmented region itself. Take for instance, even in countries like Indonesia and Malaysia itself, where often enough in Singapore, we see a very high credit card penetration rate, right? But in Indonesia itself, what I mean by fragmented itself, card penetration rates are very low. So in terms of how do we then provide value as well as ease of payment to the end consumer, often enough, we would then also look at what are the predominant mode of payment within these countries itself. So for example, the likes of Indonesia as an example, other than credit card, there will be the use of virtual account, cash on delivery, e-wallet payments as an alternate mode of payments. And I guess also at the same time, direct debit is also one of the major mode of payment in Indonesia itself. So as we look across the region, we will definitely be also taking into consideration how do we help end consumers, but I think more importantly also work with the banks as well as the schemes to enable that.
Thanks, Kelvin. Thanks so much. Very insightful. You mentioned in your presentation earlier that the traction is mainly coming from the millennials and Gen Z as an audience. Were there any other surprise? Is the trend only particular to these two groups, or do you see any surprises on the uptake the rates of adoption from other segments?
Yeah, no. So for us, right, through our data, right, we are able to see 70% of our users ranging from the age of 26 to 45 itself. And these are the segment of users that are very smartphone savvy, as well as very engaged in terms of digital social media channels, as well as users itself. And they from what we also understand, they value the flexibility and the convenience of making payment through omni channels, both online and offline itself. And of course, to answer your question itself, who else do we see within our books itself? It's definitely people like within my age group who are also value seekers, right? I mean, the age of people who would shop online as and when we require. And I think more importantly, if you look at today, where we are forced to work at home, right? Most of us are working from home. And that's where we would get our laptops or our chairs and home setup, right? And often enough in the past, where we may just make a single purchase, buying each item at a time. But of course, with buy now, pay later now, you are able to, aggregate these purchases and kind of split it across 3 installments itself. So that itself also, I guess, if you ask me, other than the millennials and the Gen Z itself, definitely, people who are working from home itself are also among our target group segment.
All right, looks like I fit the bill. I saw some when I was making payment online e-commerce. There was an Atome selection, and I saw some perks. I hesitated a while, but after today, I will go back and try. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
And that's for consumer, but let's say for the businesses, you shared. I understand from the audience today, there's a lot of some merchants and business owners. What are the opportunities for Atome to be working with such partners on a BNPL? Is there any opportunities you can think of pertaining to that?
Yeah, definitely. For us, right, as we continue to evolve in terms of providing the ease of payment, I think one very large considerations that we look at is also how do we help merchants, right? Especially, I think in terms of also working with SFA, FTA itself, right? More importantly, how do we also, work in this partnership to be a voice in the fintech space. But I think more importantly also help to drive business owners to scale, not only across from a brick and mortar space to an online space, but I think more importantly, helping them to grow across the region itself in terms of scalability wise itself by providing the area of expertise to them, as well as the alternate mode of payment for them itself. And more importantly, driving our end consumers to drive sales across at their location itself.
Good point, Kelvin. So there's a lot of value to the stakeholders within this ecosystem. In your deck, your presentation, I saw that a lot of merchants now are mainly in the retail space. Do you foresee more, from different industries or more retail merchants to come on board, to join in the bandwagon?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for us, right, the key verticals that we do operate in today are in the likes of fashion, beauty, and lifestyle, as what you correctly pointed out. But definitely where we are looking towards in the future, hopefully towards the end of the current COVID situation itself, would be moving towards hospitality and tourism itself as a new vertical, with the lifting of the travel restrictions, hopefully in the near future itself. That's where we do see a great opportunity in that space to work with partners like Agoda and other partners itself. So definitely, if you ask me, these are some of the areas today we anticipate. And I think more importantly, we are looking to drive consumer needs in that space itself through our flexible repayment.
Interesting. I can't wait for the travels to be open. I think I can fulfill my vision, my dream to travel around the world with Atome.
Definitely. Yeah.
I see a lot of questions coming in. Keep it coming, audience. We will pick up those questions. Just if anything comes to mind, just give us just drop in the Q&A box. We'll address it very shortly. Okay, but now we'll just move on to the next few questions I have. Well, we talk about the opportunities, for consumers and then to the businesses. And let's talk about the challenge for BNPL. Obviously, it's nascent in Singapore, and there's a lot of risk and compliance framework. Would have been, probably during the start, it will be very challenging through a lot of consultation with regulators for stakeholders protection, and I do see some questions on stakeholders protection. Will you be able to share some key learning points in this journey?
Yeah, great question. In my most humble opinion, right, I think it's very important as and when we even expand across the different markets itself, or even in Singapore itself. It is always very important for us to engage the local regulators at the very beginning, at the very early stage. And why is it important? It's also for us to understand what are their requirements, right? As part of our social responsibility going into those markets itself. And I think more importantly is to build that healthy, sustainable relationship with these regulators, at the same time also understanding their needs and able to also ascertain the requirements and hence build upon that in the market itself. So today itself, similarly, besides the regulator itself, we are also looking, or we also know the importance of working with association like yourself, where you would also represent a voice in the fintech industry for us to the regulators itself. So a couple of strategies that we put in place itself, but I think at the end of the day, we definitely would want to understand each and every country's different landscape, and more importantly, what the regulators are looking for in those areas. And for us, the role that we play as an independent body itself is, so of course, we do have the likes of our own credit and risk team itself when we look at, ascertain, the consumers that are coming on board, and more importantly, working with the schemes, developing in terms of credit scoring solutions and platform itself that also helps to mitigate risks to both the end consumer as well as to the merchants itself. So these are some very high level examples that today we have in place that we use to drive that.
I see. Thanks again, Kelvin. I come from banking, 17 years, and banks, when we do credit scoring, data authentication, that's very stringent. So when I enter fintech, it's mind-blowing. So a lot of things cannot be done in banking. It's being done within the fintech space. And I took a glimpse at some of the questions also from the audience, and there was a question pertaining to the credit risk, etc. So and true enough, according to a CNBC article that I read, some challenges of BNPL is the lack of credit checks and increase in consumer debt. Is your current infrastructure sophisticated enough? And maybe you can also go a bit deeper and share how the screening, the scoring, and the qualifying of borrowers being done to ensure that loans are being paid back. And whether there's a balance between commercialization and compliance.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so I'll take this question on two parts, right? Today itself, right? If you look at a consumer coming new or registering as a new customers with Atome itself, often enough, he or she will tag his credit or debit card within our app itself as a mode of repayment or source of funds itself. So that being said, right, one way that we do mitigate risk is the fact that today, even if your credit limit on your card, for example, has $10,000, right? As a new user itself, within the Atome app itself, I think one of the areas that we do put in place is the fact that we do not allow the full credit drawdown of the full credit amount or the credit limit itself. We would proportion a certain percentage of that because first and foremost, in short, we would want to understand and build a relationship with the customers. And over a period of time where we analyze the customer's spend pattern, whether or not he or she is a good paymaster, right? We will then increase his or her credit limit within our app itself for them to purchase larger ticket size item. And if you also look at today, our average ticket size today in the likes of Singapore or Asia itself is USD about $150 itself. So that being said, I think the percentage or the amount that we assign to each end consumer are very reasonable in that space, ensuring that they do have sufficient funds to purchase what they need. But I think more importantly, protecting the interests from a risk angle itself. And also for the fact that today itself, we do have a very deep experience in the area of data, right? I mean, coming back to our parent company, Advanced AI, which predominantly started off as an AI as well as a data company itself. And from there, with that backbone itself, that kind of powered as an engine behind the scene in terms of risk assessment, in terms of data profiling, as well as understanding the end consumer itself.
Well, technology is really useful, and especially during, we conducted a lot of AI, machine learning, and data analytics course in FinTech Academy, and there was a lot of interesting use case, and Atome is always flashed out as one of them. The way credit scoring is being done using AI, and how data is being used to for an organization to decide who to lend the money to, or who to you grant a credit to. But thanks a lot, Kelvin. It's very insightful. On the innovation front, for merchants, they are more positive and profitable, to drive revenue streams, and providing customers payment options tend to spend more. So there's a lot being done in this space. And for Atome itself, I think from reports we all seen that it has a rapid growth for the past 1 to 2 years. Well, the question now is, so many things being done in this space by Atome. You've shared obviously a lot of insights about what the organization have done. The question I have for you now is it a matter of what's next, or is there more to be done?
Yeah, definitely. I think much more have to be done, if you ask me. That's what is keeping us busy, right? As the business grow itself, we look at new ways of innovating ourselves. And I think more importantly, Atome itself being a regional company itself, where we have presence across the region, that's where we are also able to incorporate the best practices across the region. And I think more importantly is to keep on building and improving the experience, the Atome experience, right? For example, itself, we are looking at introducing our loyalty program itself. And also to share with the viewers on the call itself, Atome is one of the first buy now pay later players in Asia to introduce Apple Pay as a mode of payment, to create that convenience and user experience itself. So definitely we are also looking at other modes of payments in the same similar space itself in the near future, to drive that convenience to our end consumer. And as we also look at within the app itself, right? How do we then develop new and deeper features that will help not only our consumers, but I think more importantly, our retailers and our merchants to grow in that space, right? By providing things like real-time store analytics, I think more importantly, sophisticated merchants interface, as they come out from the COVID-19 epidemic itself. So I think these are the things that are in the pipeline. And if you ask us, right, we are often enough, our eyes and ears are open, and that's where we are able to not only take in what is going on in Asia, but across the world itself.
Thanks so much, Kelvin. Thanks for answering the question and sharing some insights about what Atome is moving forward with next. I will now open. I see a lot of questions coming in. I will now open our forum to questions. So keep voting for your favorite questions online. So I'll take some questions. A lot of people are very interested in the BNPL model. So first question, Kelvin, is the BNPL models going to affect credit card usage by users, since the concept is very similar?
No, definitely not. If you recall, I mentioned earlier, right? We work in partnership with the banks, because often enough, the credit card users today are our customers itself, right? And how do we partner with the banks is today itself, when we work with bank partners, we will look at opportunities on how to drive marketing, usage, promotions. I think more importantly, bringing value to our end consumers. At the same time, pushing them to shop at our merchant's location itself. So all in all, definitely, we are not competing with the banks, but more importantly, helping the banks as a partner together with us to grow.
I see. Thanks. I see a very interesting question on process, very kind of operations. It has the highest vote. How how do you process refunds or returns for Atome's case?
Okay, great question. In short, no difference from a normal credit card transactions that happens today on a single chart, right? Today itself, if you look at how the Atome payment flow is, right? When, for example, a transaction of $120 is being made, right? And the end consumer decided to put it on Atome as a buy now pay later mode of payment itself. That transaction gets split into 3 equal installments, right? Of course, the first installment will be charged immediately, deducted from the card, so that the merchant in this case will have that authorization and approval to release the good. And what happened behind the scenes is that Atome will then make full payment to the merchants, taking away the risk from the acquirer in that perspective. In short, we bear the risk. And what we then do is we then charge the second and the third installment on the credit card 30 days later. So all in all, right, if you look at the whole business model, it is no different from how a credit card is being processed and charged each time. And in terms of the credit and refund process, it is also in line with the scheme rules of engagement.
I see. Yeah. Oh, pertaining to this process, I saw another questions asking about how does Atome ensure that users actually pay? Because the users get to take the items back home before paying, and then maybe the first installment, and what happens after that? How do you ensure that?
Yeah, okay. So I guess like any businesses that runs, right, there's an element of risk, right? Likewise for our business itself. So that's where through our credit scoring and through our big data itself, we kind of form a profile of who are the customers that are coming on board. And at the same time, through their spend history and spending patterns itself, that's where we are able to ascertain whether this is a good customer itself. And over a period of time, if the customer is a good customer, then definitely we will improve our credit scoring as well as the credit limit to the end consumer itself. And in terms of how do we then ensure the customer pay, I think there isn't a sure way to do that. But I think the more important thing is how do we then limit our exposure, right? So one way is to limit the credit as one example. But I think second thing is also looking across the type of merchants that we bring on board and who are the consumers that will predominantly or traditionally shop across these merchants itself, right? That itself is also in line with the type of customer profile that we bring on board.
I see. Cool. Following that question, there was another question, pertaining to the credit scoring. I'm not sure whether it's a bit sensitive to ask. I'm also very curious about it. Is it possible to share the percentage of uncollectible payment from users? Do you have any insights?
Yeah, I think today itself, from what we are seeing from our record, is as low as 1%, which is very low. Yeah.
Impressive.
Yeah.
Oh, so your AI is wow. Oh. Okay,
yeah.
I'll ask you more later on offline.
Yeah, I guess it's also AI plays a part, but I think more important is consumer education itself, right? At the end of the day, right? In terms of our T's and C's, we put it up front. So no surprises that come across to them in terms of they do know in terms of like what are the late fee charges itself that is being imposed to them. And hence often enough, once people are aware and no hidden surprise itself, often enough, I think people would then, make that purchase and at the end of the day pay what they need to pay. So definitely that's something that, if you ask me, being upfront and being transparent is very important.
Yes, transparency. I think a good thing I realized that the fintechs are generally very good at is transparency. Banks are trying to catch up on that area. Too many disclaimers. Consumers get lost in all the disclaimers and the terms and conditions. So well done.
Yeah, and I think also importantly, making it easy to the end consumer to understand, that also plays a very important part.
That's right. Okay, there's another question on transaction fee. What is the transaction fee for merchants? Is there any limit to the products that I think we have a lot of merchants here today.
Yeah, I guess what he's referring to is the MDR, right? Merchant discount rate itself, right? So today itself, I think if you ask me, right, the charges that we charge the merchant is based on how do I put it, confirmed sale, right? And in return for that MDR that we charge, which is a confirmed sale, we do back end also provide marketing because we market the merchant. And at the same time, also, what we do is we, at our end, Atome end, often enough, we give a discount to incentivize the user to spend at the merchant itself. So if you ask me, the spectrum will normally range between 4 to 6%, depending on which country, as well as the merchants itself.
I see. Well, and the next question is along the line of acquisition strategies. I think something will be close to heart for you. So the question was, what strategies at the initial phase, what strategies did Atome implement to target merchants? Were there any targeted industry groups, segments, etc.? Can you share some insights along that?
Yeah. So definitely at the beginning, at the start, right, I think what we did was to understand our consumer and understand our customers. Where do they like to shop, right? I think that's the one of the most fundamental questions that we ask ourselves, right? Through understanding your customers, I think that really is half the battle won. And often enough, I think if you recall the slides that I shared with you, right, a lot of the brands in the retail space are brands that today speak to the audience or the target segment that we are engaging in. For example, the Bershka, the Zara of the world, or even Sephora of the world. Definitely, these are some of the example or brands partnership that today we work with, where we tie a strategic partner itself. And also, other than these strategic partnership, which cuts across the region, definitely more partners as one, as well as, I think more importantly, working with banks, because working with banks as well as PSPs, payment processors or aggregators itself, we often do a kind of referral model. So whatever referral merchants that they pass on to us, and in the event if the merchants do take up our buy now pay later services, then of course in that arrangement itself, we would then look at probably a rev share model to be shared across with the partner itself. So these are, I guess, some of the things that or some of the strategies that we put in place today, where it ensures both parties have a win-win. Yeah.
I see. Yeah. So alluding to the acquisition, there's another questions about, let's say if one day Atome hits critical mass in merchant acquisition, how else can BNPL achieve growth? I mean, you did share some insights about new product launches, solutioning, so the audience are like very interested to find out a bit more insights along that line.
Yeah. I think that is a very good question, because like any businesses, like even in the credit card space today, right, you'll definitely hit critical mass, right? In terms of you'll start to plateau, right? So for us, right, we are definitely very forward looking. That's why we are really studying, in terms of where can we then drive scalability, or in fact the next push, right, in terms of evolution. And definitely, if you look at other buy now pay later space, right, as what I mentioned earlier in our slides, they have gone on to card issuance space, So that also is one of the strategy that we are looking at in terms of increasing and driving the scalability across.
I see. There was one question pertaining to profitability. Afterpay, another buy now pay later platform, has been reporting loss after many years. What's Atome's outlook on profitability?
Okay. For us, right, we definitely are growing, and if you ask me today, our break-even timeline, I believe, is about 3 years itself. But I think more importantly, right, our strategy is looking at how do we make our customers happy, right, at the end of the day. Because once you are able to engage with your customers at the level that you provide that convenience and drive that repeated spend again and again from them, and then that's where you are assured that this is a platform that they will come back and use, which will then in return give them value. And that's where we will build upon other products and services and to increase our other lines of revenue, in this case, on the overall business itself. So some of which I mentioned earlier, right? We do have our B2B business as well as a B2B business space itself. So all this kind of complement and interconnect with one another.
I see. Yes. Well, there's a lot more questions coming on the product. Okay, so one interesting one I would also like to find out, are there any plans to provide this service to those unbanked, without credit card or debit card? Because you mentioned that it's been around credit card and debit. So any plans along moving away from credit card and debit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I myself, I think through through the exposure of speaking to regional bank partners as well as PSBs itself, we do understand that certain countries like Vietnam, where credit card couldn't be used as a mode of payment, for example, the predominant mode of payment in this case could be a bank-issued card, which is not even a debit card itself, right? So things like examples like this, or even direct debit from a bank account itself, we call it DDA or EDDA itself, are alternate mode of payments. And countries like Indonesia, as what I mentioned, where some countries they do believe in cash on delivery or cash payment itself. But I think at the end of the day, it's the convenience of what we provide to the end consumer that matters most to us. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Value, it's always the key. It's not so much of pricing or other things within the fintech space. But fintech, I realize they bring a lot of value that solve real customer pain points, and really we'll see a lot of adoption in that space. And another product questions, I'm also quite curious. Currently, Atome only allows three payments. Would there be any plans to improve this product, as in increasing more installment payments, more than three, beyond three?
Well, I guess it all depends on where our customer shops, right? I mean, if we do see there is a need for us to go into a larger ticket size item, right, be it electronics or so, definitely then we will look at having that flexibility of increasing the installment period to a longer period itself. That is also pretty much in alignment with the kind of product strategy, as well as, I think more importantly, the customer experience that we hope to achieve.
I see, sure. And then back to the profitability question. There's an interesting question from the audience. Currently, is the profits coming from consumer or from the retailers, or is it the FIs, the banks?
That's a very, very good question. So if you look at the difference between us and the banks, right? The banks also do have their own installment products, right? Where predominantly a very large, I wouldn't say very large, but a percentage of what their earnings, right, through the cards itself, right, it's also through interest charged to the end consumer. But in the buy now pay later space itself, right, where we make our money is with the merchants, right? I mean, the MDR that we charge the merchant itself, by giving them that value, by driving them traffic, and as well as giving them the exposure within our website, within our app itself. So I think all in all, right, if you look at the whole entire ecosystem itself, right, it's all independent with one another. I mean, we kind of interconnect, but yeah, definitely that's how the business itself we look at.
I see. Okay. And then you did mention earlier that based on the country specific, Indonesia, Vietnam, and then Atome will adjust based on the way people bank there or the way they shop there. There was a question from the audience for Philippines. I think that previously it was launched there, it wasn't very successful. Were there any plans for Atome to enter the market, and what could be done differently?
Okay. I mean, definitely Philippines is within our radar. It is also one of the markets that we have also launched or close to launch pilot itself. Yeah. So I guess at the end of the day, it also boils down to the first and foremost looking at the landscape, right? Because different countries have different landscape itself, and we do understand that. And I think more importantly is to first and foremost identify and work with the regulators to ensure that we do fit into the guidelines. And then secondary is about at the same time is also to understand the customer spend pattern and what is the predominant payment method within this country itself. And I think more importantly, working with the PSPs or the payment processors in these countries, right, to facilitate that mode of collections.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for the insights. And another question was some of the there were some headlines on the risk of consumer debts. I think I did mention earlier. One of the audience would like to understand how Atome is doing to mitigate the rising problem and how to encourage responsible spending within consumer means. Is there any initiatives that Atome might be coming out with to promote some sense of financial literacy in this space?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So I think one example is, of course, working with FTA, right? I mean,
That's right.
looking at how we partner together and drive that customer and consumer education. I think that's very important. And I think within ourselves also, when we work with bank partners or schemes itself also, I think that will also be a very common approach that we take, right? At the end of the day, how do we also be a responsible, merchant or payment method itself? So all in all, right, and also putting in place like what I mentioned earlier, right? Even today, knowing the fact that the consumer, coming into or registering within our app has the ability to spend $10,000, but then we do not give them that full access to spend that $10,000 itself, right? And gradually increase the credit limit based on the customer spending habits itself. I think these are some of the ways that we are already using today to mitigate that.
Yes, thanks. I think I think from my opinion, I think Atome has been very conservative. The fact that you limit the payment to be, the average payment size, to a certain amount. So that kind of mitigates certain risk of overspending by the consumer. And the fact that you achieve 1% default rate is very impressive. I think you guys did a very good job in this space. And of course, from my perspective, in FinTech Academy, we have been advocating a lot on financial literacy, and alongside, of course, a lot to be done. There's a lot of good technologies out there, value adding to merchants, to consumer, creating a lot of not just fulfilling dreams, in advance, but also creating a lot of liquidity in the market and creating a lot of value to end solutions to solve pain points and to add real value to the consumers today and the merchants and the banks. So I do see a lot of value in Atome's as a solution, as an ecosystem provider, shaping the whole industry. And I really appreciate our time today, Kelvin. Thanks so much for sharing so much insights. There's a lot more questions coming in, but we ran short of time. I think Sophia is giving me the cue. Well, Sophia, I believe we have addressed a lot of, Kelvin has shared a lot of insights on the BNPL landscape, and then we have addressed a lot of sensitive issues and shared a lot of good insights to what Atome has done to shape the whole industry and the value he has added to the ecosystem. And I'm very thankful, very honored to be here. Thank you so much, Kelvin. And over to you.
Thank you, Bernard, for having us on the call, and thank you, Sophia, for organizing this forum. I truly enjoyed myself, and I think more importantly to thank my colleagues Jeffrey and Ruin in terms of helping me prepare the presentation deck itself. I think definitely we look forward in terms of a closer partnership with FTA in terms of helping some of the initiatives that we just mentioned on the call itself.
I totally agree with you, Bernard. So I'm so immersed in the conversation that I lost track of time. So if we can have our way, we're gonna have an extended period of time. But I'm mindful of your time, and really I'd like to thank you, Kelvin, Atome, and your team for making this session happen. It's a fantastic session. I'm sure a lot of consumers, merchants, and also investors get an insight today on buy now, pay later, especially from Atome. And Bernard, thank you. And thank FinTech Academy as well, Dr. Koh, for making today's session happen and for your partnership. So audience, I also like to thank you for taking time to join us this evening. So some questions, if you have that burning questions that you want to ask Kelvin, Tommy, or Bernard, feel free to send them to me. I'll be happy to bridge that connection and also send your questions over to them. So let's get connected, and feel free to reach out to me. Happy to do that. There'll be a feedback form when you exit from this webinar. So feel free to share your feedback, or if you have any questions, further questions, post them there and follow us on LinkedIn, because we have exciting webinars lined up for you. The next one will be on future of esports. So we have industry experts, we have ESL Gaming, one of the biggest in the industry, and other experts to join us to talk about the future of esports. So without further ado, I'd like to say stay safe, everyone, keep well, have a good evening, and thank you very much. So thanks again, Kelvin, Bernard.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah,
good evening.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.